curriculum resources offered by REACH, which is the Real Education About Cannabis and Health. My name is Zoe Bordelot-Cass, and I work for the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute as the Youth Action for Prevention YAP coordinator. We are a nonprofit organization based out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, with the goal of healthy children. YAP is a youth-focused fetal alcohol spectrum disorder prevention program that encourages youth to create resources and projects to build awareness of FASD and other alcohol-related harms among their peers. We also provide training and support to adult allies to engage with youth in conversation and education about health decision-making, including substance use and cannabis. I'm excited to be here and to welcome the REACH team. So today we have Tish King, Jennifer Clemmer, Holly Menzel, and Ty Bittner with us, who will be sharing more information about evidence-based cannabis education and how the REACH resources can be implemented with youth. So thank you so much for the hard work of this team and everything they've contributed to this project, and for being here today to offer your expertise in this area. This webinar will be recorded and will be posted on the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute website, and I'll be following up with the link once we're able to post it. And I will pass it over to Tish to get us started.
Thank you, Zoe. My name is Tish King, and I'm one of the members of the REACH team. And Zoe, thank you for welcoming us. And I think, as I was listening to you talk about the work of the YAP program, I think it parallels perfectly with what we're all passionate about, which is basically, building capacities for youth and youth engagement and meaningful conversations towards the idea of capacity and skill building. So I am a faculty member at the College of Nursing, and I'm just one of the REACH team. So we have 4 of us here today that will be talking to you. We're planning for about 30 minutes. Depending on conversation and input, and then certainly we'll leave lots of time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So first of all, I think we have some people coming from the north. I think somebody introduced themselves from Lloyd, maybe Regina. I can't remember where we're all coming from, but obviously it's important for us to acknowledge the land on which we stand, and recognizing that probably most of us are working and learning and growing in Treaty 4, 6, and 10 in our province. If there's anybody else from a different treaty land, would you mind putting it in the chat? But we just want to pay our respects to the first peoples of this land, and recognize that we have a significant privilege to live here, to work here, to grow here, and to learn here. Our work really wants to acknowledge that privilege, but also to reaffirm our relationships with those around us. REACH stands for Real Education About Cannabis and Health. And this project was launched by myself and Holly Menzel. Holly's here today. Holly is a professor at the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition. And I work in a school where Holly's children go to school. And so we knew each other through that connection. And once cannabis was legalized, we started to recognize that there was definitely a gap in how children were being taught about cannabis. And typically in the Saskatchewan curriculum, cannabis has been handled under the topic of illegal drugs. And certainly with the changing landscape and the legalization of cannabis, we knew that we needed to move that topic away from illegal drugs, and then sort of to acknowledge the change that children would be seeing in their homes, communities, and neighborhoods. And so Holly and I started this project in 2018, and we started some conversations about how to create some meaningful educational resources. And as the project sort of gained momentum, we were able to partner with the Cannabinoid Research Initiative of Saskatchewan. We had some funding from SHRF, the Saskatchewan Health Research Foundation. We had certainly acknowledgement and partnership with Greater Saskatoon Catholic Schools and the Saskatoon Public School Division, and also some external stakeholders that reviewed some of our materials, including the College of Medicine and the Lung Association. And We're very happy to work interprofessionally on this resource, and the synergy between the nursing and pharmacy and nutrition team has been really critical in terms of getting these resources to the point where they are now. So before we dive in to cannabis education, I think it's really important for each of us to recognize that we come with a backpack on our shoulders that affects how we view drug education, drug literacy, and drug agency. And so depending on our own socialization and our own learning experiences, it can have a significant impact in how we approach drug education with youth. And so I think it is really important for each of us individually, as well as maybe even collectively, to think about and reflect on the following questions. So what is your view on cannabis? So obviously most of us grew up in an environment that was pre-legalization of cannabis. And so some of that some of that story comes with us as we approach this changing landscape of this drug in our country. Most of us probably have either a personal story or a parallel story to our lives of somebody in our lives as they were maybe making some decisions around cannabis use, particularly when it was illegal, an illegal substance. And, I think as health professionals, allies, teachers, social workers, psychologists, most of us can have in our mind's eye a youth who has been affected by cannabis use, who's maybe even, contemplating or well into regular use of the substance. And so I think it's really important for us to think about those narratives because those would shape how we navigate the relationships forward. And then the fundamental question is, do you believe it's important for kids and youth to be educated about this substance? And, obviously our team feels pretty passionate that it's really important that kids get real education about cannabis and their health. That passion of believing that kids need that education and that conversation can drive your work in the field. And so those are just three questions that you could reflect on. I'll just stop here and ask if there's anybody who would like to share an answer to one of those questions, or if you would just like to put it in the chat, you could certainly do that as well. So as I'm giving people time to think, I'll just mention that, when we work to create these resources, there's a fair amount of literature out there that talks about how our own narratives can shape the way that we educate youth. And I think that that is something that the participants could reflect on as we move through the rest of the presentation. That really, constructivist approaches to drug agency and drug literacy for kids it's really about, kind of organic, unscripted conversations versus controlled telling, this is what should be. And I think that many of us, if we reflect on our own narratives, many of us grew up in an environment where this substance was just say no. And we know that just say no doesn't currently work with Canadian youth. So something to think about in terms of your own approach to drug education. Next slide, Ty. Okay, so what is REACH? REACH is essentially a curriculum resource, and it has been approved by the Saskatchewan Ministry of Education, and it is targeting grades 7 and 9 youth in our province. And we'll talk a little bit later about why that age group. It includes a toolbox, a toolkit of PowerPoints, lesson plans, activities, videos, and different types of activity resources that a ally, teacher, educator, social worker, psychologist, whomever might be accessing the resources could pull from and tailor to the child or youth that's sitting in front of you. And REACH is formulated, has been designed from the ground up using a constructivist approach. So we'll talk a little bit about constructivist approaches. if we have social workers and psychologists and health promotion folks in the crowd, chances are you know about constructivist theory. And so constructivist theory embraces the backpack that each of us carries. It recognizes that we all come with a narrative that shapes our presence in time. And constructivism is really about how we as human beings make meaning in our lives. In terms of reach and how reach uses constructivism, what we hope is that kids will explore cannabis use. They'll explore the substance, they'll discuss it, they'll talk about their decision making. They'll maybe even reflect on how their own lives, their own narratives, their own backpacks have been shaped by those around them or the social circumstances in which they find themselves. And we really want, through conversation, the most basic aspect, to really have those unscripted conversations, where, as I said, there's a lot of participative conversation versus informed telling. So it changes the power dynamic. The conversation is not about me as telling a child what they could and should do. It's more about, this is what I know. What are you going to do with this information that you're gathering? So constructivist approaches really embrace sort of what it sounds like, looks like, and feels like to have a meaningful conversation with an adolescent or a youth. The conversation, as I said, is really organic. It's a little bit unpredictable. It's variable across, classroom A, classroom B, community A, community B, even from desk to desk in the same classroom. It thinks about a contextual response. So constructivists really believe in sort of understanding the diversity that exists within a learning group, if it is a group, or if it is an individual child or an adolescent. It's really about understanding that child's context. So perhaps their social determinants of health or their capacities, their decision-making abilities, and maybe even some of the pressures or skills that they may be lagging in. In terms of embracing cultural safety, it's really about creating a safe space, a no blame, no shame space, where your cultural beliefs are embraced. And the best way to approach that as a constructivist is to be curious. And so when I think about some of the folks who maybe are working in the North, I think it's really important for you to have conversations and awareness of what this means in a culturally diverse population. In terms of connectedness, what we strive for is that kids would feel known, noticed, and missed. And so we want them to feel like we know who they are as individuals, that we notice their curiosity or their engagement or their appetite for learning. And if they are absent or vacant, then we notice that and we miss that. And so it's really the foundational theory is to really create a sustained and engaged and invested relationship with the youth that you're trying to target. In terms of curiosity, any question goes with a constructivist. There's no right and wrong answer. There's no prescriptive that you should. It's more about you could or you might, those types of things. So, and REACH really uses a lot of inquiry-based activities. Obviously, the idea is that we would learn together in the spirit of co-scholarship. And so it really is about shouldering up with youth rather than, top-down kind of didactic approaches where the learning can be shared and that I can maybe learn as much from youth, and I certainly have. They can school me every day and surprise me. And then altogether, a constructivist approach is really focused on building capacity. Next slide, Ty. So just a little bit more about REACH. Our goals within the REACH curriculum resources are to increase student knowledge. So this is that cognitive domain stuff. They will know certainly more about the science of cannabis. They'll know about the drug's capacities and what it can do to their body systems. Through some of our inquiry-based activities, we really strive to build capacities around decision making. So we do some scenario-based type work where they might consider what this might look like and sound like in their own home, in their own friendship circle. or maybe even behind the school, what it might sound like and how are you going to use what you know in terms of drug agency. What we're really focused on is helping kids adapt to different situations, different environments. Maybe we ask them to predict what it's going to be like the first time somebody offers you cannabis and what you might do. And how you might navigate that situation. And then for those youth who we know to already be using, what we really spend a lot of time talking about is how to reduce your risks so that if you are going to use this substance, then perhaps you're going to make these other decisions. For example, not drive a car or not, combine it with other substances. And so it is definitely not a just say no approach. It was definitely focused more on this is a substance that a lot of Canadian youth will and already use. And so we want them to have the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and capacities to be able to reduce their risks. Okay, so that's my section. I'll pass it on to you, Holly, next.
All right, can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Okay, so first off, why should we teach REACH? And why should cannabis education be incorporated into schools or, be a priority for us? And so I think the first thing is really just acknowledging that Canadian youth have one of the highest rates of cannabis use worldwide. And we have some stats here for you too. So the Canadian Student Tobacco and Alcohol and Drugs Survey was conducted in 2019, for instance, and it showed that 18% of youth that were in grades 7 to 12 admitted to using cannabis within the year before the study. And there are other studies, of course, out there as well. And from what we gather from the studies that are out there, this number is even higher for age ranges that are higher. So if you look at ages, 16 to 24, for instance, it can be as high as 43%. The survey that I referenced here also found that 16% of grades 7 to 12 felt that there was really no risk to cannabis consumption. And of course, we know that that's not true as well. We know that using cannabis before the age of 25, when the brain is still developing, has been linked to poorer outcomes. And so this can include things like cognitive impairment or poor academic performance, or even the potential to exacerbate mental illness if there is a family history or if there's a predisposition that exists already in the child. And next slide, please. So cannabis is also one of the first drugs that a teen is offered, and it's been referred to before as a gateway drug because its use in youth is sometimes it leads to increased experimentation, or it's associated with increased experimentation with other illicit substances. And it's also worth noting that REACH, as Tish mentioned, is so much more about just providing education about cannabis. It really aims to empower youth in the areas of decision making and capacity building, stigma reduction, and risk reduction. And so really it's more of kind of a holistic program, if you will. Next slide, please. So, of course, no discussion about cannabis would be complete without acknowledging its therapeutic potential. And medical cannabis use is increasing. And we're finding that it's being used to treat a variety of different illnesses. And I think that legalization of cannabis has definitely stimulated the research in this area. And I think it's great because the current evidence suggests that medical cannabis is effective for some indications. So just a couple of examples. For instance, it's being used with good success in patients with specific types of pediatric seizures. And there are some physicians that are authorizing cannabis for other things as well. So things like autism spectrum disorder or symptomatic relief in palliative or chronic pain. And really, there's just so much more that we need to learn about the therapeutic potential of cannabis. And so some youth in our schools or around might be using medical cannabis as authorized by their physician already. And through the REACH program, we really, we want to address this, and we want to challenge students to explore their values, both on medical and also recreational cannabis. And the hope is really by doing this is that we can sort of assist in establishing a common and informed understanding of medical cannabis and related legislation to that as well. And I will turn it over to, not sure who's next here.
I'm next.
Okay, perfect.
All right, everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up, perfect. So why grade 7 and 9? Just to start things off, REACH was developed following the Saskatchewan curriculum, and grade 7 and 9s are really important ages to target. So when we look at grade 7s, they're approximately 12, 13 years old, and they're looking for that autonomy in their lives and making decisions for themselves and trying to, figure out their morals, values, without the context of their parents at times. And then we see grade 9s, and they're facing their peer influences, and their peers are the center of their world. And so these two stages are really important then when we think about, have them think about their health and making informed decisions as to what's best for them. Next slide there, Ty. So when we think about the REACH toolkit, I just want to emphasize that this curriculum resource is free and it's available to you all. Again, as Tish had said, there's PowerPoints, there's lessons plans, there's video links, activities, and all accompanying resources that REACH was based upon. So each lesson is 30 to 45 minutes of class time. Now, give or take, it can be flexible depending on your cohort and depending on the learning needs of your group. There is minimal supplies needed, but under each lesson plan, there is a small list with the accompanying activities that you can adapt as you do them within your cohort and within the youth. So when we look at the 4 lessons overall, Ty, just on the next slide, we can see this lovely infographic. And I just want to point out the artwork there was done by students who were part of our REACH pilot project there. And so they're beautiful and talented, and we had many great discussions within the 4 lessons. So the 4 lessons are, are planned to be done in sequential order. And the overarching theme is the same for both grade 7 and 9s, but where it differs is in the depth of content for the developmental stage. So what I mean by that is for grade 7, there's a strong base in decision making. And then when we move into grade 9, we're really focusing on that more advanced knowledge around decision making, the peer pressure, and then of course the risk reduction. So when we look at lesson 1, it's all about incorporating the understanding, knowledge, and attitudes toward cannabis. And we provide information around cannabis and distinguish between myth and facts. And this is a really fun activity as we've gotten some of these questions from the students. And then we were able to have open discussions about them and, related to the research that's come out. And so here it really targets the cognitive domain of learning within the students. So this lesson focuses on and engages students on the topic and makes them invested for learning. We want them to have an appetite. We want to have them ask questions as we're really fostering a safe, non-judgmental approach to what was an illegal topic. And now we want open discussion. This also, one of the activities, as you can see in the picture, is a graffiti wall. So not only do we have the myth and facts activity in this lesson, but we also have the graffiti wall. And this is done at the end of the lesson typically, and we really want to encourage them to think about what they knew or thought prior to lesson 1 to now we've had this discussion, what they've learned, what they think about it when they hear the word cannabis. And as you can see, the graffiti wall students had a lot of fun with it. As we said, what's up with weed? And we said, please incorporate what you think, what you know, how you feel about it when you hear that word cannabis. And as youth allies, you're able to look at this and tailor the rest of the lessons and the information and potentially some of the discussions around what you see here. I just want to bring in the idea of social norm messaging, as we know that that's their currency in our world in general, and even it's filtrating up with us adults as we're having to keep up with the times. And so we know that this impacts decision making in our youth, but also in ourselves. So, when we're seeing this on the graffiti wall, we really want to incorporate what their currencies are and then how we can tailor some safe around it. So lesson 2. This is where we explore the physical consequences of cannabis use and its effect on the different body systems. And we're specifically focusing on the consequences of cannabis use before the age of 25, when we know the brain then is fully developed. And so within the body systems, we have students explore the how cannabis affects them. So one of the activities here is we give you a list of references, evidence-based references, to give to the students. When we have typically in classrooms broke the students up into groups and given them a body system to look at. So whether it's a respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the gastrointestinal system, the reproductive system, and we said, go find some information, and then you're going to report back. And then they're able to come back and teach peer-to-peer what they have found out on the consequences of cannabis. And it creates a really rich discussion, as well as some potential surprises that they didn't realize would be the consequences around cannabis. As well, that medicinal cannabis discussion comes up, where we also get to hear the lived experience of some of the students and how, you know, they've been exposed to cannabis, or how maybe some of their family members use it more in medicinal purposes. On to lesson 3. Within lesson 3, this is one of my favorites. We explore the social consequences of cannabis use, specifically looking at the legal and the mental health consequences of using cannabis as an adolescent. And so we bring in conversation of stigma here and how it relates to cannabis use. And we also explore how cannabis use might impact their relationships. So we're thinking about not only their guardians, but extended family, coaches, teachers, and other peer groups, and how it may affect different health outcomes, as well as maybe future plans and goals. So again, some really rich discussion here, that if there's that safe environment, this discussion flourishes and a lot of learning happens from peer to peer. As we go on to lesson 4 then, the final lesson emphasizes the focus on peer pressure, decision-making, and risk reduction. And this, as Tish talked about, is really about where that capacity building approach comes in. We want to have them manage that peer pressure while making informed decisions, which we know is challenging. We hear about it, we've been through it. We also start to talk about the idea and explore of risk reduction. So the concept of risk reduction is where some people still may be hesitant. And here we really explore values and morals of students and explore the different methods on how they may say no. And we all know no can be really hard. And when we think about the students who may not choose to say no, and making that informed decision, we then really want the risk reduction strategies to be discussed. So one of the slogans we use, and we have it in our PowerPoints, is start low, go slow. And it's only one of Canada's lower risk cannabis use guidelines that's online. There's about 10 of them then that we can discuss in terms of that risk reduction approach, because as we know, the abstinence approach, or the just say, or the no, like the cold turkey no, doesn't always work. I also want to recognize, did someone have a question? Okay, I'll keep going. Questions can be saved for last. We also want to recognize that Canada is going through a social change, and some audiences still may be very hesitant or may not be comfortable to be openly discussing cannabis use. And we want to respect that. And I just want to reassure that this REACH resource was developed with evidence-based information at the forefront, and it is well researched and sourced. And we really do want to foster that safe, non-judgmental, no shame, no blame discussion. And I think the end goal then, if we can have those discussions with our youth, that they'll take it home. They'll take it to their different environments and talk about it and inform each other on some of the risks and open up those relationships to support each other to make healthy, informed decisions moving forward.
Thanks, Jen. So we have some anecdotes here spoken from teachers specifically. So we know that many folks in the room, are not teachers or in the education stream themselves. However, REACH can be used in a broad range of settings and in a broad range of areas where youth can learn. So a few anecdotes from teachers here. This program gave our students an opportunity to learn about the science as well as the myths surrounding cannabis. They were also taught ways to stand up for themselves if and when they encounter cannabis in real life situations. And as many of us know, it's not so more of an if, but it's a when youth are going to be exposed to cannabis.
Another one here, as a teacher of adolescence, I feel that this program should be brought to all Saskatchewan classrooms. The program covers the emotional, physical, and social aspects of cannabis use and the consequences associated with with each other rather. So what we're hearing from teachers is that they are very, very grateful to have a resource that's backed by science, that's developed in collaboration with a number of different institutions and colleges from the university, because it really provides a broad scope and a broad range of information and education to provide their youth to make an informed decision that's right for them. And then we hear from youth about their experience with REACH, and it's one that's very, very positive. I've seen this myself in the high school in which I work, that we know we have an array of comfort levels and experience levels of students with cannabis. So we may have one student who is a frequent user of cannabis, and we may have another one sitting beside them that's never even really considered the topic. And what REACH does is it opens up a conversation that can hit both target populations. So both people who maybe are very well versed in what cannabis is and how it's used, and those who aren't. So we're hearing from youth that they really appreciate the realism behind REACH, and they appreciate the open and honest dialogue that they can have amongst each others and with adults in their lives, because these students really do bring this topic home. They bring it to the dinner table, they bring it to their friend and their peer groups, they bring it to their activities that they take part in, and this conversation definitely reaches well beyond the classroom setting, or in this instance, the setting where youth are learning and when they're engaged. So you can reach REACH in a number of different ways. You'll see on the left-hand side here a URL access code to the Google Drive. You're welcome to copy and paste that into your search engine, and that will take you to a very user-friendly Google Drive where each lesson is broken down based on the grade level or age range, and all the accompanying resources are right in there. So your PowerPoints, your materials list, your lesson plans, any accompanying videos are all housed there. And the exact same thing is housed on the Saskatchewan Ministry of Education website. And that is what the link in the bottom right-hand corner here will take you to. So REACH can be accessed in a number of different ways. Our emails are going to follow in the coming slides, and we're more than happy. Yeah, Michaela, great question. I will copy and paste it in the chat certainly for you. And we really tried to provide very easy access to this for you, because as we said before, it's free, and it is very, very well versed among youth and among teachers, and we're hoping to expand that to our adult allies who work with youth. If you are interested about chatting more, if you want some more information, if you need some clarity on what you're seeing in the lesson plans or in the REACH folders, by all means, please reach out to one of the four of us. Our emails are listed there, and we can be reached anytime through our USask emails. So we'll open it up to questions and conversation. We are happy to discuss anything that you wish, whether it's an experience you've had with youth using cannabis, questions you maybe received, questions about the resource itself. This is a time and a safe space for you to ask those questions. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here while we do this.
Hi, that was a great presentation. I learned so much from that. I just had a quick question on, I guess, in general, substance use education programs. I think, as we're all aware, the lingo and the language around cannabis, vaping, and smoking changes quite a bit, especially in the teenage age group. What are, I guess, your recommendations for keeping up to date with the interventions and making sure that the adult allies are also aware of the new lingo changes?
Okay, great question. I think one way to keep up to date is to be honest with your youth, and they can teach you way, way more than you will often know yourself. So I find that our students are very lingo and verbiage savvy. And so oftentimes I have to say, well, okay, hold on here, just so I know the context of our conversation, and so I can be more involved. What does that mean? And so I actually find that's my best way to learn, is actually from the youth themselves. In terms of other resources, there's a lot of really good resource links in the REACH toolkit, and they're more national resources that we've pulled from. There's a great resource called How to Talk to Youth About Cannabis, and it's about a 20-page document that's really user-friendly. And so I personally would recommend government reputable resources to find that out. That's a great question, and something that I think takes some humility in saying, hey, I don't know, or I'm going to find out with you, and doing some research maybe together.
Ty, I was just going to add on that once you open up the curriculum resource, in one of the appendices, there are live links to some of those government websites, the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Canadian Public Health Association, some of the drug agency documents. And I think in terms of, I would agree that sort of idea of losing the need to be an expert and learning together. I don't know, that's a great question. Let's get on the computer here and figure it out. I think that's really a great sort of vibe to approach the work with, I suppose. Michaela asked in the chat, can any youth ally deliver the program? Do you need any sort of prior education? You don't need a formal education. This doesn't have to be set up like a lesson in a classroom, for example. This could be one-on-one. I've certainly done it with a few youth that need different and more detailed information, more personalized information. And so what I would say is, when you access the curriculum resource, if you are completely green to cannabis, if you will, you know, I think there's a lot of pre-reading there. So there's sections like where can I learn more, you know, and it'll bring you to some of those places. That document that Ty mentioned, how to talk with youth about cannabis, is really very valuable. If you have a parent in your population, Drug Free Kids Canada has a really good parent resource. And so if you have some parents in your population who need more information, what I like about that particular tool kit is it says, if my kid says this, I could say this, this, or this. You know, it actually builds parent capacity and how to handle some of those emotionally charged situations, for example, when they find their kids have been using cannabis. So I did put the links in the chat above. And the one thing that I think we could probably add on is, with the help of Chris, the Cannabinoid Research Initiative of Saskatchewan, we were able to create 2 educational videos. So even if you could access those as a springboard for conversation with a youth one-on-one, that would be really valuable too. And the beauty of the video is you could pause it and talk about it. So one is targeting that grade 7, so 12, 13-ish age group, and then one is targeting the grade 9 age group. And so within the resource as well, the video links would be there. So maybe if we have no questions for us, maybe we could ask our audience some questions. I mean, based on what you currently know, do you think this would be a resource you could use as a youth ally?
So I think, this is Alana. I think that working at Ranchero Society, we have obviously a whole host of different participants that stay with us at the group homes. And, you know, lots of them come with different problems. Lots of them do come with substance use issues. So I absolutely think that these links that you guys have provided are wonderful. And I think I am going to pass them on to some of our clinical caseworkers that work, in the homes one-on-one for some treatment with the youth. I think this could be, even if it's them finding a couple different things that they haven't tried, I think this is an excellent resource to add to their toolkit. So thank you guys very much for this. This is wonderful. And yeah, I look forward to sharing it. And I'm not sure if some of my colleagues are in this meeting as well, but yeah, I look forward to sharing it. So thanks so much, you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Alana. And I think, obviously we'd love to hear your feedback if you have some feedback. I think we, between the four of us, obviously this is sort of a standardized set of resources, but the way that you tailor it and model it to the population you're trying to reach, that's your skill set. You know your populations far better than we could. In terms of getting this to become a ministry approved document, it had to be linked very closely to the Saskatchewan Learning Curriculum Outcomes, as Jen mentioned, and recognizing, though, that in any grade 7 classroom or a grade 9 classroom or any youth group, you have as many different needs and sets of needs as you have bodies. So, it's really up to you to take it, use it, manipulate it, and we'd love to hear some feedback after you try, for sure.
One thing I would just like to add, so you all know that this is something that's available. We have a hard copy of the resource that we are happy to mail out, totally free of charge. Again, if you'd like to use a hard copy with your youth. So it's about almost a 100-page document that goes through the lessons and PowerPoints and the information. And if that's a resource that you feel you would use with your youth, please reach out to myself or one of the four of us, or put in the chat if you're interested. I will follow up with an email, and that is something that I can mail out via the mail as a hard copy.
And just so everyone knows, we will be following up, again, like I said at the beginning, with the recording of this presentations for you to share with your coworkers or with anyone who may be interested in accessing more information about how to use the resource. And I can also connect you with Ty or with other Reach team members so that you can ask follow-up questions if need be, or provide any feedback on the use of those resources in your programming. So we will be following up with more information, and I can also send the Google Drive link as well in that follow-up.
I just want to make mention too, as we're always encouraging your feedback, because we're using a Google Drive, we're able to adapt and update easily. So we will be doing that as well on the Google Drive, which is nice because research is coming in quite at an influx. So again, the Google Drive is made for that, but with your feedback and how you've adapted and tailored it, maybe we can look at adapting and taking in some of your feedback and inputting it into our resources as well. So
Okay, if you have any further questions that you want to ask one-on-one, please feel free to reach out to one of the four of us or reach out to Zoe. She can put you in contact. I see there is some interest from a few folks to get hard copies. We'll be in touch about that as well and make sure that those get into the mail. And we just really want to thank the SAS Prevention Institute and YAP for hosting us today. We really appreciate your platform and allowing us the opportunity to come here today and present about REACH. And to those of you who joined, thank you so much for the work that you do with youth. We know that right now especially is a really, really challenging time for everyone, given our current circumstances, and the fact that you're here today wanting to learn more and share more with them says a lot about who you are and a lot about the work that you do. So thank you very much.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. I was just wondering, do you know how long the program is? Like, is it a 1-day thing, or would you need a week, or would you need?
So with the 4 lessons, it's about 30 to 45 minutes, give or take. So what we've done in our schools usually is a lesson a day, just to kind of let them digest some of the information, think about it, maybe talk about it at home or in different environments, and then they come back and we gradually build on their knowledge base and then their skills and capacity building. That's typically what we've done.
30 to 45 minutes a day for how many lessons is there? Oh, 4. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Because some of the lessons have quite a bit of content in them too to talk about, right? So it's nice to kind of do that 30 to 45 minutes, especially within that age group, keeping them focused, keeping them engaged, and then having them kind of digest it a little bit and come back to it, the next day, or we've done 1 a week as well, depending on, how time permits within the classrooms. The nice thing about this program is it's very flexible, so you can use it as you want.
So Jen, I was also just going to share that when we created this program from the ground up, youth were involved with that. Nursing students and pharmacy students were involved with that at the university. So it started out as an interprofessional project, but it's been piloted a number of times in approximately 5 schools across Saskatoon right now, actually maybe even more than 5 schools. Targeting both grade 7 and grade 9. And so, we chose schools that had diverse backgrounds, culturally, economically, in terms of environmental, community-based diversity situations. Once you're familiar with what's in the lesson, really easy to tailor it to the kids. And so I remember this one story. One of my nursing students was teaching, and she threw out a question and she said to the kids, they were in grade 9, so what do you guys know about cannabis? And one of the youth put up her head and she said, it's really fun, like I was smoking last night. And so we're like, okay, change the approach based on what we've got, And so I think, again, what would be key for the allies who are going to use this is get familiar, link it to what you know about the population you're targeting, and then manipulate which pieces, because some of it you may think, nah, they're not going to respond to that, and that's totally fine. You have that freedom to adapt as needed.
Okay, I have a list of folks who are wanting a hard copy, so I will be in touch. I plan to get your emails via Zoe, so I'll be in touch in the next day or so, and we will get those into the mail. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and your evening, and please stay safe wherever you are.
And thank you to the Reach team for a great presentation. Thank you so much, and for everyone for being here today and sharing in the time with us.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
I will
afternoon.
be using it.